Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Futurist Mike Walsh.
How do you create brands that last? I mean, you only have to look. The company behind me, of course, is not Rolls-Royce. It's Geely. And you can only have to look at their flagship model to know why they so desperately needed to buy Volvo. It's because although these companies can innovate at very high speed, they're still trying to get their minds around what everyone in this room knows better than almost anyone else, which is how do you create great brands? But my challenge to you is that what we should be exporting is not design, but 21st century design thinking. Or another way of saying that is what we should be really selling is not our brands, but our ability to create them. And this is never going to become more important than in the next few years, where there's a new wave of innovation. Some people call it wearables, some people call it human scale technologies. But the fact is that they're built on extensions of our behaviors, on our humanity. It's about anthropology, not about technology. So as you face this big change, what are you going to do? My final piece of advice is this. Don't think about it as a single big transformation. This is not chess. It's actually F1 racing. And if you're a fan of F1 racing, you know that in a racing season, they'll have to make 22,000 upgrades over 20 races. 80% of that single car will change over that season. And the way they do that is constantly making small incremental improvements, feedback, change. That's the real opportunity for us here, is to understand that real innovation comes from being able to see the world through your customer's eyes, about seeing it as anthropology, not just technology. Future-focused firms will let their consumers lead their innovation thinking. So challenge your teams, take them out of their comfort zones and into the direct lived experience of your customers. And ask yourself, what is something that your customers do today that drives you crazy? But if you thought about it just a little bit more, might be turned into a source of new opportunity. So I know I hit you with a lot. Let me end with this. Don't let the future surprise you. I've done some of the hard work for you. I've created a summary of everything I spoke about today, the key points, the next actions, and mind grenades. So if you'd like a copy, just put this URL into your device, mike-walsh.com/go. You can also take a picture of it with your phone. Make me feel like Justin Bieber for a millisecond. And let me end with 3 quick answers. You need to be focused on number 1, the next generation coming through. They're going to change our world. Number 2, the power of platforms, redesigning the way your company operates. And thirdly, the new model of innovation, or Sunzai. Take those 3 things together, and we're moving into a new world. A world we've got a generation who've grown up never knowing a world without sophisticated technology. They're a living challenge to all of us to now rethink the way we do business. So please do that. Think big, think new, most importantly, think quick. Because one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is this: the future is now. Thank you very much.
And when you think about who actually cut the deal, I just want to show you some of our Scandinavian companies who did very, very well, because they found, let's say, a well-defined niche. You have Lego, for example, dominating the market of interlocking brick. You have Volvo Trucks, still Swedish, doing very well in their market. And Norway is a world leader in oil and fishing farms. Is this nichification the best way if you want to protect and fight off emerging competitors?
The examples are a bit different. I mean, Lego is a great example in that this is a company that invested heavily in really understanding the changing patterns of the way kids were playing. So they did a huge study on this, and they actually looked at, they asked parents to show their kids' rooms and how they played, and they realized that the parents were actually staging the bedrooms. So parents had a lot of interference on the way kids were playing. And when they actually interviewed kids, they figured out what they really wanted was freedom from their parents. So Lego found a way to actually make that a kind of a free space for kids to, have private play. But then again, they also missed out on Minecraft. Minecraft is the 21st century Lego in some ways when you think about its jump to the digital world. Norway was a different example in that I think one of the great strengths that Norway had was that when they opened up their oil reserves for exploitation, they made the condition that any offshore business that was going to do that would have to do it working with Norwegian companies. And that provided a critical mass of support for Norwegian innovation. And that's why you see Norwegian oil technology businesses all over the world now. So there's definitely something to be said about insight, but also about scale and support.
I saw a survey that a lot of Europe's and Scandinavia's biggest companies were actually founded in the 19th and 20th century. In comparison, in California, 39 of the state's 100 biggest companies were founded since 1970, and I haven't even mentioned Asia here. We see such a big difference. You speak about the magnitude of innovation. Why do we see such a big difference from Europe, US, Asia, when it comes to building new business?
Part of the issue is that America is not a country, it's an idea. The people that are behind all these American companies weren't born in America, they went there. And they went there because it was easy to start up a business there. And more importantly, it's easy to get capital. Silicon Valley is not a mystery. Everyone's trying to create their own Silicon Valley in different parts of the world. But what Silicon Valley does better than else is taken the Hollywood studio model and applied it to venture capital. So it's almost like marketing a movie, like it's the summer movie. Like who's going to be the summer startup? And everyone gets behind it, the familiar people get back it, it's the familiar stars, they're attached deals, and that's what gives these things velocity. So I think in Europe, one of the big challenges here is that in many markets, it's difficult to start companies. It's difficult to get capital. There are a lot of cultural barriers, and you see this in Asia as well with failing and penalties. And it's difficult to get that accelerator model of exposure and hype.
You talked about leadership, and you say in regards of how to, let's say, move ahead, get new markets and so forth, you have to think about anthropology. A lot of our friends here, they have business minds, but do you actually need to start thinking, where should I go for new piece of advice, new education, which has nothing to do with business, if you want to capture and conquer that world you're talking about?
I contest that the business mind is diametrically opposed to the anthropological mind, because great business people in the end are great observers of human behavior. I grew up in a retail family actually, so my dad actually ran Harrods in the 80s for the Alfayets. So every Saturday he'd make me sit there and, on a stool in the middle of the department store and watch people. I thought he was punishing me. And it wasn't until years later I realized that actually every Saturday morning that's how he tested his management model. He was just there to see what people bought, what they were looking at, how the merchandising worked, how the flows of people. So I kind of think if he was alive today, what he would be doing would be actually not studying the shoppers on Saturday morning. He'd be studying the server log files of the business, because that's where the kind of grassroots insights are to be found. But it's the same mind.
We're running out of time, so I'll just jump ahead to the 3 quick questions that we ask all our keynote speakers at this summit. So tell us, Mike, what company do you admire the most and why?
I won't give you a most, but I'll give you one I like a lot. And for me lately, that's, as a passionate photographer, has been Leica, also European business. And I admire them because this is one of the few brands that were the birthplace of its category, that not only managed to survive into the present century, they've managed to also be the key innovators in it. And as an example of 21st century rebirth, I think Leica is a wonderful example.
And what do you see as the most critical skills needed for a CEO to successfully rebuild or innovate a company?
For me, it's simple, it's empathy. The more you get down to what really is troubling at the heart of companies, it's around culture and connection and for people who work there to feel like they've got a sense of purpose. So for a CEO to be able to put his mind and adopt the mental models of not only the people that are working for him, but his customers, that's a capability of empathy that I think is going to be critical for 21st century leaders.
And what is the best advice someone ever gave you, Mike Walsh?
So I made the mistake once of consulting another futurist. It was an astrologer on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I went in there and she was like, so you want to be an actor? And I was like, no, I bet that works for 90% of everyone else you see, though. And she said, okay, smart ass, I'll give you a piece of advice. She said, follow your head in love and follow your heart in business. As it turned out, it was pretty good advice.
It worked for you?
So far.
That's good. As I said, we love success, but human beings, we often learn most from our downfall. And I'm thinking, if you're a futurist, sometimes you must make some kind of predictions wrong. But if you should share one of your biggest lessons learned in your career, what is that? And what did it teach you?
I made a mistake in my late 20s of searching for my dream job. And I spent years going to interviews and talking to people and looking for it. And in the end, I actually realized that the best way to get your dream job is actually to make it.
And that's what you did.
That's what I did.
Before the break, I'd like to leave ladies and gentlemen of the audience with a key piece of advice. One good advice for them to put back here and remember every day they go to work. If you should give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
If one of your best employees leaves you, invest in whatever they do. 80% of my former employees are now multimillionaires, much richer than me. So if you like them on the way in, you'll probably like them on the way out.
And with that piece of advice, let's give him a big applause. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you.